come to cast a spell. By the all-seeing eye of Agamotto, I present... No, my God! Oh, no, 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 my God! Oh. Just had to grab my peepers along the way. Whew. Just so I could do this. Once again, live on tape from a secret yet undisclosed location hidden somewhere deep in the bowels of historic downtown St. John's, Newfoundland comes in the Library of Graphic Literature. Yeah, and its host is Wallace Ryan. Okay, thank you. With me, your host. Anyway, hope everyone is keeping well and healthy and not catching the COVID or getting sick like I did. Don't have the COVID, but I have a very bad ear infection, so even as I'm talking to you, it sounds kind of muffled to me. So if I seem to be talking loud, well, no, it actually is. It's quite annoying. I can talk without talking loud, though. But hopefully I'm swimming in antibiotics, which always leaves me kind of screwed up and blah. So forgive me. Anyway, so this is week 1 of no new comics because of the COVID. And if I'm like everyone out there, you're all shaking and kind of going weird and clawing at the walls and licking the floors and playing with your action figures and blah, and otherwise keeping occupied and very civilized about the whole thing, which I'm trying to. But now, of course, with no new comics comes a change in our format, at least for now. I'm going to feature in the shows upcoming anyway. Just going to pick topics and talk about it. Mainly talk about books from the library and stuff like that, and hopefully be able to keep you occupied and keep you watching the show at least until the comics come back. One thing I got to say is I'm glad to see a lot of publishers are stepping up and not releasing digital only versions of their comics, because I think that would be an awful betrayal of all the hard work all those comic book store owners have done out there, and I think this is a small price to pay to keep our comic book shop. So take one for the team, folks. Just hang on, and like I say, within a month or so, I think we'll be seeing new comics again by May. So just hang tight, okay, everyone? Hang tight. They're coming. But like I say, I thought it would be unfair to release them digitally, considering, like I say, all the hard work that all the comic book owners of local comic book stores all across North America have done. I mean, they've put their lives on the line in terms of mortgaging themselves to the hilt so that they can have a physical store, and put themselves in debt so they can actually carry products which then they actually have to own then if they don't sell it. A lot more risk than just some person online with an online store, running it from their basement or whatever. Right? So, and like I say, it's the comic book stores that built our art form. It'd be like turning our back on art galleries, say, for instance. Anyway, in news anyway, and that's another thing too, is I will talk about a bit of news, some sad news. Juan Jimenez, who does an Argentinian comic book artist, has died from COVID. He's best known for his work on work for the humanoids. I think he even did something for the Meta Barons. I do believe it is, but it's sad to see. So our condolences from the library go out to his family and to all fans of his. It's a sad time out there. In happier news, I guess, Rick Veitch has been made the Cartoonist Laureate. I think it's of Vermont, I do believe, which is so cool. Congratulations, Rick, a man very, very much deserving of an honor of that. I've actually been a fan of his actually since he first burst onto the comic book scene, and he was just. I love his artwork. It was strange and exciting. He was to me, he was like the next generation coming. He was the start of the '80s crowd and a whole new type of people. Your Bill Sienkiewicz's, your Frank Miller's, your all the big talents that erupted into the '80s. He led the charge, and I mean he did some great books. The one one of my favorites, Brat Pack, which you have to read because of all the books ever done about sidekicks. It's my favorite, and when you're reading it, you'll say, "Oh Jesus, this doesn't look very well upon sidekicks." And I was never a big fan of sidekicks, especially Robin. Anyway, to also do my part for COVID and people who are stuck in, besides doing the show, and that is, every day I'm going to do a little recording. I'm going to do a reading of a love poem. Figured, with all the anger and sickness and all the terrible crap going on out there in the world, we could use a little bit of love. And so check it out. I'll post them to the Library of Graphic Literature page. They're only very short poems for the most part. I am planning to do the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, so that's going to be longer. But check them out anyway and share them around. Just something to share the love. And last but not least, Thursday Comics did not come out this Thursday, of course, and that's of course because of me with my earaches. I'd sort of got into a small mini quarantine until I got hold of my doctor and was prescribed the requisite ear drops, which are working, although like they say they leave me hearing things pretty strangely. But so yeah, the Thursday Comics this week will be the coming Thursday. We're gonna probably do it Sunday or Monday. Sunday I think we're planning on doing it, so and keeping it fresh. So check it in. I'm not going to tell you what this week's episode is all about. We'll keep it a surprise. But yeah, support me in Dennis's foray into podcasting. Anyway, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for this show? Okay, for this first COVID show, or the absence of comics, I don't know what to call it. Eh? Well, anyway, I'm going to talk about actually the two main series of books that got me into collecting hardcover collections, and they are, of course, the Marvel Masterworks and the DC Archives. Dun, 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 dun. The Masterworks were first in '87, so I mean pretty ahead of its time even back then. And the Archives came, I think it was 2 years later in '89, and I actually have a near complete collection of the DC Archives myself. I'm just a couple short, so I think about 12 short. So if anyone wants to donate them to me, let me know. But and the herein lies actually the origin of the Library of Graphic Literature. When I was in the 90s, I had my own comic book store. The economy here had gone down the tubes. They'd closed down the fishery here, so everyone was scrambling and suffering. And I got laid off from a job at the ad agency, and then the comic book store that I went to work with part time, they went out of business, and I seen opportunities because I had a huge comic book collection, or like a really good issue collection of comics, and I used them for my back issues and talk about a great set of back issues. It was premier. It was all packed with just great stuff from one end to the other. I'd love to have that same collection now to set up in a store. but I mean, hey, I made money off it. What am I going to say? They kept me in comics too for a few years, but I was basically selling off my childhood collection. So after 4 years, I'd mostly gotten rid of just about all of it, and the economy started getting better. And my late brother and I, we had a meeting. He was my manager, so to speak, and had a chat. And he said, "Well, you haven't lost money, but you haven't made money. So what do you want to do?" And it was just like, "Well, I kind of done this. This is good enough for me." So I closed up the shop. And of course, I had a lot of stuff left over, including my beloved little spinner rack here, and but mainly I had a lot of Masterworks left over. So and I had a few DC archives and stuff like that, and so I decided, geez, you know what? I could probably recreate my childhood collection, in the hardcover. I don't think they'll have out all the stuff that I had in my collection. I said naively at the time, but I figured, okay, I'll go for it, and I started collecting. Started of course with the Masterworks and the DC archives, and with the I collected a large amount of them. What made the DC collection so easy to get was that my buddy Jason, who runs a comic book store, when the DC did this huge sell-off years ago of Diamond of the DC archives, he gave me a great price on them, so I was able to buy a lot of them for a very good price. So I bought most of these. I bought probably 90% of the library from him. Maybe 95. There's very few outside of what I bought when I was living down in New York, which I bought mainly at St. Mark's Comics. He's the person that I bought the most off of, I think. So thus was born at the Library of Graphic Literature, and it just got insane from there. I just kept buying more and more. Even when I moved to New York, living there, starving, whatever, I kept buying books. I guess I figured it was better and cheaper than entertaining myself going out to a show or whatever, and so I did. Anyway, let's get down to the comics end of it. So we'll start with the Marvel Masterworks. They're a great set. I mean, they came out, of course, with all the big ones first and all that. Your Spider-Mans, your Avengers, and I bought all those. But in the end, I ended up selling them because I got into buying the omnibuses. But I only did that for like the main titles: Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, any of the big people. I got the first as many as I could in omnibus form. But I kept a lot in terms of the Masterworks. I just kept collecting all the rest though. All the minor titles, including this. This is one of the rare marbleized ones that I have like this. I actually did it on purpose. I don't know why at the time, but it was just like, even though I got all the silver colored ones, this edition of them. There was something about Captain Marvel. It was one of the first. This comic itself was one of the first Marvel comics I ever bought when I was a kid, like back in the '60s, and I'll always remember that. And so I don't know, it just felt like, I'll make this one special. All the rest are basically in the normal silver format. But here you go. This is Captain Marvel, and I have all of the Captain Marvel Masterworks. Great work by Gene Colan. Definitely worth buying. And this issue. I can remember seeing this page being used in a book in cartooning when I was a kid, talking about visual flow, right? And I mean, if anyone had visual flow besides Gil Kane, it was good old Gene Cole. And then Don Heck filled out a few years after that, and it quietly went downhill. I mean, I still like the Heck issues, and I read them and all that, but I didn't go wild for them. Now, of course, that's the normal ones. Now, along with, and this is what your average Masterworks looks like today. But for a while there, they actually put out, looks the same but only red. They did the Atlas era. They also did the Golden Age era. That's right behind me there. And I collected these, but unfortunately they cut these out, which was a drag because some of these had some really cool artwork in them. This one has Russ Heath, Paul Ryman, Joe Manley, Gene Cole, and Bill Everett. This is Battlefield, for instance. So we got to see some of the more rare, and I'd like to see this from more of this. Although I guess they're doing it with the omnibuses, with the suspense and the monster ones from featuring Kirby and Ditko. But yeah, I mean, there's so many other artists out there that did some great work during this period. Your John Severins, all these people. You're Joe, and this one you're tragically. Ooh, oh, I guess that's where I left off. Anyway, it's still a good book. Now, speaking of that era, this is actually one of my other favorites from that. This one I fell in love with right away because it had a rare Kirby, some rare Kirby stuff in it, the Yellow Claw. But this also features Joe Manley and his Black Knight series, which I can remember seeing reprints of through the years, and it's just something really nice about his artwork I kind of liked. He tragically died one night while coming home. He fell between two trains on a subway in New York City. But I mean, he would have. People think he would. Well, he would have been right up there with Ditko and Kirby and all that. And I often wonder how Manley would have changed Marvel. Would he have done Thor? You know, who knows? It's hard to say, right? And then we come into the Yellow Claw here. Where is it? And the thing I like about, like I say, the Yellow Claw is, like I say, just seeing the Kirby ones in among them. It's sort of medium. It's medium Kirby too, just for the art style. It's right in between the old-fashioned Kirby and the newer Kirby. So it's definitely worth. I mean, there's even stuff that. I mean, this is almost like Kirby Crackle there, look, or there. So, and there. So, like I say, early, definitely a nice piece of early Kirby for you Kirby fans out there. But yeah, a really cool little collection, Black Knight and that. Then we had Menace, which is sort of their, I guess, their answer to all the horror titles of the time. So you had all kinds of people, once again, all kinds of talent on this from, I think Bill Everett did some of these. Yeah, Russ Heath, Joe Manley again, Gene Colan, John Romita Sr., George Tosca, and, you know, and on and on. And, you know, people who would later reappear in modern Marvel. Speaking of more modern Marvel, here we have, and I picked out two of my more favorite ones. I've talked about a lot of other editions, so I was looking, okay, which ones haven't I talked about? God only knows. Well, I know I've talked about these when I've gotten them, but since then. This is one of my favorite, and I'm glad I got this collection of Kirby's Black Panther from the 70s. This is such a quirky strip. But I still love it, actually. I think Kirby was still at the height of his powers in the 70s when he did the Eternals and 2001 and Black Panther and Captain America. And I love this because this was almost, you know, it was almost like Marvel Fourth World was what I used to think of these stuff as separate universes. I mean, great characters, just I mean, and even stuff that they did end up using in other comics. And I mean, his character is everything. And this, King Solomon's Frog. I mean, I love this concept. I mean, look at this. Classic 70s Kirby. But yeah, definitely worth picking up. And I went along with my Captain America omnibus that Kirby did and my Eternals omnibus. Now we just got to get 2001. So let's whip through this now here. Iron Fist, of course. This one I like because I can remember buying this issue in the comic book stand when I was a kid. And this is where I first encountered John Byrne myself. And I read it and I was like, Jesus, John Byrne guy is really cool. You know, just love his artwork. Very unknown at the time, and I became a huge fan of Iron Fist. I was a big fan of all the Kung Fu comics anyway, the Shang-Chi and the Masters of Kung Fu, that type of thing. I picked out a couple of my favorite DC Archive editions now, finish off on those. This is one of my favorite, was Dr. Fate. As a lot of you know, I'm a huge fan of Doctor Strange and Dr. Fate. Same thing, these just have such a neat cartoony quality to them. So worth picking up. I think the art was mainly done, I'm trying to remember, I think Bernard Bailey, or no, Gardner Fox and Howard Sherman. Okay, well there you go. So it's funny because it says Volume 1, they never did come up with Volume 2, which was a drag. I still think they should have kept it on going. I don't know who lost their mind, because they build up years and years of trust and love for these books, and then they pull the guts right out from underneath them. And it was an amazing series. It was the reproductions were great. I mean, you got 10 comics for, I don't know, what is it, 10 comics for $50 basically, which, you know, still was, you know, in printed form like this. That's a bargain. This is, of course, one of the 3 volumes, but I'm just going to show you one. Another one of my favorite, Adam Strange. This is out in omnibus form now too. Adam Strange features the fabulous art of the wonderful Carmine Infantino, who I happened to meet years later when I was down in New York. Nice chap, very old school, which I liked. But his artwork, and someone was talking to me, it was my buddy Jason, were talking to me about Flash and Carmine Infantino and that, or was it Dennis? I think it was Dennis actually, and there was just something really cool about his art from that time. He had the sleekest kind of cities, stuff like that. I loved it, absolutely loved it. This was Infantino at the height of his powers, and Adam Strange, I think, was the apex. And we'll end off, last but not least, with the Action Heroes Archives. These are 2 of my total favorites because it contains Ditko work from Captain Atom, The Question, Blue Beetle, and Captain Atom again. I'll use this one because this has all of them on. I love the Blue Beetle, and fresh out from Marvel Comics and looking for something better to do with his time. He did some great comics for Carlton in the 60s. I was a huge fan of the Blue Beetle. I just thought he was such, and especially his his bug. That was the coolest thing of them all. I love that bug of his. That's why I can't really stand the new one. It just don't got what made the Blue Beetle so cool at the time. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode. We'll look back at the Masterworks and the DC Archives and what loving they had for us. Anyways, on that note, I'll see you next week. Stay healthy, stay apart, keep in touch, and keep reading comics. And let's beat this COVID thing. Love y'all. Oh yeah, and watch my love poems and listen to our Thursday comics podcast coming this Thursday. Oh no. Okay, see you later, people. Love y'all. Ah, there I go. Out the window. Boom. Smash. Crash.